The Superior Trail eXF 9039 is a 29er EMTB with 140mm travel front, 130mm travel rear. And we have ridden a couple of those short travel 29er EMTBs before. And they have had us wondering, what's the point of having less travel on such a bike? They have got a pretty long wheelbase and they've got the big 29er wheels. So a lot of them have felt really stable and like great descenders, but they have had less travel. And we've been wondering, why is that? What's the point of having less travel on such a burly, long bike? It doesn't feel much more nimble than the 150, 160mm travel bikes. So yeah, what's the point? Well, it turns out there is a point. This bike has got 433mm chainstays, so they are really short. Head tube angle is 66 degrees, so not super slack, and it's a good angle for this kind of bike. And this keeps the wheelbase down, and this makes this bike feel quite easy to maneuver, easy to handle. Steering is quite responsive and fast. And the weight isn't too bad, considering this is a 630 watt-hours battery. It's 23.9 kilos on our scale with pedals. So yeah, there is a point in going with a shorter travel bike. And I think that's a pretty good weight on a 29er EMTB. That costs about 52,000 Norwegian kroners. I haven't got the international prices because every time I try to find the EU pricing or UK pricing, I usually end up getting it wrong. So the cables are quite nicely integrated, and you can alter the height of the stem and the handlebar. So if you want to raise or lower the handlebar, you can actually do that without disconnecting the brakes and the shifter cables and everything. But when you remove one of those and you slide this back, you have to use irregular round spacers on top. If you want to alter the height of the seat, there isn't really much to work with because there is no slack on the cable for the dropper post. You really have to make sure when you buy this bike that you get the seat height set properly by the dealer. And if there are several people using the bike, then adjusting the seat height to fit different riders isn't all that easy, really. When we got this bike, the seat was a tad too tall for us, so we basically slammed the dropper post to the bottom. But then the cables that lowering the seat pushed the cables outwards, and the pedals are touching the cables. And also the cables are rubbing a bit. The cables are really nicely integrated, but they need to be cut to the proper length for this bike to function as it should. The Superior eXF 9039 has got the Shimano EP8 motor. We really like that motor. Lots of power at low cadence, really easy to control. It's not the most powerful motor when you pedal fast, high cadence, trying to go as fast as you can up a gravel road or whatever. But for trail riding, this is a great motor. Also, the bike has got the 630 watt-hours battery, and it makes the down tube a bit chunky, and the fork crown comes into conflict with the down tube. So Superior has got sort of a locking, knock block, whatever mechanism, which limits how far you can turn the handlebar. And that's not uncommon, but on this bike, the amount you're allowed to turn the handlebars isn't all that much, really. The Superior eXF 9039 has got the Schwalbe knobby nick tires. They are quite flimsy, the sidewalls are quite thin, and it's a common trail tire for regular trail bikes. But then again, this is a relatively short travel bike, so depending on how you want to use it, the tires might be just fine. Suspension is the RockShox Deluxe Select Plus, which is a nice shock, controlling the 130 millimeters of rear travel. The fork I quite like. It's the RockShox Revelation. And as with the tires, it's not a super burly fork, but it's a good fork. I definitely prefer it over something like the RockShox 35 Gold RL. Drivetrain is the Shimano Deore and with an SLX shifter, 12-speed. And I think that's fine. No need to go XT shifter on a bike such as this. It's all good. Dropper post is 150 mm travel on the size large, which is a decent amount of travel. But the seat tube isn't exactly short. So me at 181 centimeters, which I usually prefer sitting a bit low, and I slammed this seat post. So to me, yeah, the bike fits me fine, but perhaps you shouldn't be that much lower than me to use this bike. Stem length is 60 millimeters, and that can be felt sort of, because this bike feels quite big when sitting on it, but when riding the bike it doesn't really feel big at all. It's got a quite compact wheelbase because of the very short chainstays. So I kind of like that, but yeah, I might go 50 millimeter stem if it was my bike. Brakes had me scratching my head a bit, because some specs said Tektro and others said TRP. But as it turns out, TRP is Tektro racing products. So yeah, they should all be the same. Dual caliper Tektro brakes. And the brakes are really quite nice. The brake handle has got a bit of adjustability. You can easily use these brakes with one finger. And the bike has, of course, got mounts for a bottle cage. So this sort of compact wheelbase, compact rear end, along with the relatively low weight, it can be felt on the trails. It's not an extreme bike on the descent, and you will get into trouble if you just bomb straight through rough sections, but if you try to focus a bit more on picking a good line, you can flow through quite a lot of stuff, and it's quite fun actually. Picking a line at decent speed, making it a bit of a challenge. It's still a great bike for most kind of trails. And on the flatter trails, you never really miss the extra travel. And you can, we really appreciated the short rear end. And yeah, it's a nimble 29er, which is quite rare, I'd say. On the climbs, the amount of suspension travel isn't that important. And yeah, the big 29er wheels with the good rollover abilities. This bike climbs really well on all our test hills, really. So the Superior eXF, it's quite a capable bike. It will handle most kinds of trails, but it focuses on being less aggressive, more nimble. And we quite like the bike. There definitely is room on the market for bikes such as this. That's it. Appreciate any likes and subscribes. Thanks for watching.